Hello and welcome to Behind the Bearcat. This is the podcast where the Northwest Missouri State University Career Services Office chats with Northwest faculty, staff, students, alumni, and friends to hear about their career journeys, how they got to where they are, and how they became Bearcats. I'm Career Services Assistant Director Travis Klein.
And I'm Hannah Christian, the Director of Career Services here at Northwest. And I've been given a lot of drum rolls lately. So, drum roll for our guest today.
My name is Hayston Wilson, and I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Missouri and one of the co-founders of Hallelujah Counseling, which is a clinical but Christian faith-based mental health practice located here in Maryville, Missouri. And I am a proud Bearcat alumni. So thank you guys for having me.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you for
welcome.
being here.
I'm super excited today, Hayston, because you have like a trifecta that we never get to see. So, you're a Bearcat because you've graduated from Northwest. You're a Bearcat because you've worked in Northwest, and now you're a business owner, right? That we get to talk to you about some of these other career-related things that we don't often get to talk about, because being a business owner is sort of a totally different jam, as I'm sure you probably are feeling right now. So I'm just super excited to talk about all of these things today. So if you want, let's hear your story kind of from back before baby Hayston back in the day before he made it to Northwest. Kind of tell us your journey.
Yes, it all began in a log cabin in the woods. No, I mean, kind of. I grew up in Mound City, Missouri, so I mean, it is a pretty small town, pretty rural area. My mom, Janet, actually is also a counselor, and she is a Bearcat alumni as well. And so I grew up being in the area and being a sports lover. Growing up, I was pretty indoctrinated within Bearcat football at a pretty young age. And growing up, being just sort of generally speaking, a Missouri all-around sports fan, whether it was Cardinals, Royals, Chiefs, St. Louis Rams at the time, University of Missouri. Basically, Northwest was the only one doing any kind of substantial winning in my childhood, and everybody else was terrible. So it was pretty fun to come to a lot of Northwest football games with my uncles and stuff. And so I had always just had a love for Northwest, and growing up, being on campus, it always just I always loved any opportunity I got to be there, and I just had a feeling that that was where I was going to end up as a student myself, and decided to major in psychology. I'm a Christian, felt like God was calling me to this career path in counseling, and that led me there. I had a wonderful experience on campus. I was very involved as a student in quite a few different student organizations. I also had a campus job as well. I worked in the administration building. I was the university event coordinator's office assistant. So my secret talent and ability is being able to build balloon towers and balloon arches, because I had to do that for events all the time. So my kids' birthday parties usually are pretty well decorated, at least with balloon towers. I can't do all the super fancy stuff, but if you just kind of need like a classic spiraled balloon arch, I'm your guy. I can help you out with that. I got the balloon blower upper automatically and everything. Because man, it's a lot of balloons if you have to blow them up with just your breath. Like, you're getting lightheaded by the end of it. You don't want to do that. Just pay $15 for the balloon blower upper.
Fair, that is true.
Yep. So I completed my undergraduate program in psychology at Northwest, and I minored in sports psychology, and then went to grad school. Northwest at the time just didn't have a master's program in counseling, and I was looking for something that integrated the Christian faith into clinical care. So I selected a program, and it doesn't exist anymore, but at the time, Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Kansas City offered a program like that. So I completed my master's program there, as well as a second master's program in theological studies. And right around that time, my wife and I had been married for 3 years now. We were pregnant with our first child and felt like God was calling us to move back to Northwest Missouri. I'd always wanted to provide mental health care services for Northwest Missouri growing up around here. I was very aware that it was kind of a resource desert, and there just wasn't much, and I'm a proud Northwest Missourian and wanted to be part of the solution for that. So I just remember this so vividly. I was sitting in the parking lot down at Midwestern Baptist, and I just cold called the director of counseling at Northwest, Kristen Peltz, and I was just like, "Hey, I'm an alumni. Is there any chance that you have any jobs opening up?" And she said, "Well, not right now at the moment, but let me keep you in mind because that might be changing in the fall." Well, not super long after that, COVID hit, and the world was very weird there for a while. But it did work out where I was able to join the team at Wellness Services, and I was able to get my start there at the Wellness Center for 3 years, and I absolutely love my time there.
Hold on, I gotta pause you. I gotta stop you here. So hold on. We gotta make this clear. Cold calling, right? So
Yeah.
this I love to tell students this, or even, young professionals, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? And if you just are searching online for job openings, or if you're just trying to keep your ear to the ground or whatever, the cold call is very underrated. As it even more now that people don't like calling each other, like, the cold call is where it's at. So I want to emphasize that. Thank you for sharing. Cold call. If you're interested in working someplace, just give them a call. Call them up and ask them what do you need to
Yeah,
do.
what's the worst they do? They say not right now, but I'll keep you in mind for later. I mean, did you know Kristen before that, or was that truly like you found that's who it was and that's who you called?
No, I did not. I knew one of the counselors that worked at the wellness center at the time, barely, but I did not know Kristen prior to that. So yeah, and if honestly, if I hadn't worked up the nerve to make that call, I'm not sure that that would have ever happened. And I think it's also important to note. Maybe Kristen would tell you differently. I don't think so, but I was trying to not be annoying, but honestly, I didn't want to work anywhere else. Like there was a big gap between like working there at Wellness Services and working anywhere else for me. Like if I was going to work for somebody else, I didn't want it to be anywhere other than there. I didn't apply anywhere else, which from a career services perspective is probably not great, but I felt very strongly that that was where I was supposed to be. I had some conviction about that. So I cold called her that first time, and I did like follow up a few more times throughout the summer as things were kind of transitioning for my wife and I. And it was kind of a process, not through anybody's fault, but that was just there was a lot of moving pieces for everyone.
We also work at the university. We also had to be hired. We know there's so many
Hmm.
moving parts whenever it
Yeah.
comes to being
Yeah.
hired here.
Well, and I think
Hmm.
that's good advice for people seeking jobs too, is it's not only the first move, but you do need some follow up. Sometimes there's a little bit of legwork with it too. I think, how many college students, Hannah, do we have come through our doors here that are like, well, I applied for 10 jobs, and it's like, well, did you follow up with anybody? Did you, reach out
All of them.
online? And none of them, like that legwork, I think, like the application is the first step. It's not the only step. So I think that there's sometimes that gets lost, especially in the online application age where you find the job online, you apply online, you converse through email, the personal part of it's so out of it that that follow up and the tenacity goes away. But that goes, if you're a hiring manager and somebody continues to reach out, it's like, okay, when we have a job, I'm going to tell this guy because he really wants to work here. So there's something to that. So keep that in mind if you're hunting for jobs or thinking about jobs or even internships too. Sorry, get off my soapbox here. Yeah.
That's a worthy soapbox because as a manager, why would you not want to hire that person? Like if they're showing the tenacity that they want to be there and part of your organization and they're willing to come in time and again and continue to ask, probably they're going to be a pretty good employee for you. You definitely want people there that are going to love the organization that you're a part of. So I think anything that you can do as you're going through that process to add that personal touch that's so often missing when you just fill out 10 applications on Indeed or whatever, I think that that's going to go a long ways because ultimately people want somebody that they know and that they're comfortable with. Reputation means something, and there's no way to establish that if you're just sort of a faceless, nameless person that's in a stack of resumes. So anything you can do to add a personal touch, I think, is always good. If you can't put your face in front of somebody, I mean, I know it's old school, but I think letter writing can go a long ways, and just anything that you can do to build a personal connection or allow somebody to sort of know your narrative, I think is it's time well spent.
So can you share with us, so you got hired at Northwest, right? It was a process. Can you share with us what it looks like, provisional licensure, all of the working through of that has to happen for someone who wants to be a counselor?
It's complicated, honestly, because within the mental health field, there's a lot of titles and it's kind of confusing. Honestly, even for some of us in the field, it's a little confusing on what's what because just for me, I've been at various times a master's level clinical intern, a counselor in training, a provisionally licensed provider, and now a fully licensed provider. So for somebody who wants to do licensure track counseling, I say that as opposed to something like being a non-licensed clinician, or in the specifics of my field, there are some people who are non-licensed, what they call biblical counselors. They're all a little bit different in what they provide. But for me, what it looked like was I had to have an undergraduate degree in, well, it really didn't even have to be psychology. Like it could have really just been an undergraduate degree for the program that I went to at the master's level because we had a lot of non-traditional students at the master's level. So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I really think that this is something I'm interested in or something that I'm maybe called to do, or I at least want to learn more information about, but I'm worried that I don't have the relevant experience or education to do this. That's not the situation. A lot of individuals I was working with were getting their master's degree in counseling and it was a second career for them, or they had been in the military before that and had funding like foreign education. Or some people like me kind of did, I guess, what you could call the traditional thing and got an undergraduate degree in psychology or social work or case management or human services or something like, or education, something like that. And then did it at the master's level. I think that it helped me to do that because honestly, Northwest prepared me pretty darn well for the grad school program that I did. I felt like a lot of it was just rinse and repeat with a little bit more emphasis on diagnostic stuff at the master's level, which was awesome. So I finished my undergraduate degree and then I did my coursework at the master's level. And then each program's a little bit different, but there is typically some sort of hours requirement for an internship that you have to fulfill. In most programs in most states, it usually takes you about a year of working 3 or 4 days a week to be able to do that. For most people, it's kind of a challenging time. It's kind of similar to student teaching, where you're unpaid or pretty much unpaid, but you're working close to full time. So it's kind of challenging to do that. So once you finish that, you are usually considered like a master's level counselor in training until you take the National Counselor's Examination, which is kind of like passing the bar for lawyers, but not that hard. So the National Counselor's Examination, it's something that you study for, but honestly, it's more just long than it is difficult. So you go to a proctoring center and you take the exam. And then once you pass, then you're considered provisionally licensed in the state. It takes a little bit of time for your paperwork to be processed and all of that. And then you start your provisionally licensed stage after that. And again, there's an hours requirement where you sit under supervision and somebody who's a fully licensed counselor who has been fully licensed for 3 years is eligible to be your supervisor. In my case, I was very lucky because my boss, Kristen, at the university was my supervisor, and I felt like I was learning from the OG whenever I was going through that process. And basically, they sign off on all of your treatment notes under their license, which is great, just so you can make sure you're not messing anybody up too bad or anything like that. And so then after you've gone through that process and completed all of your hours, which is a combination of like direct face-to-face hours, you have to have a certain requirement for that, and then what they call indirect hours, which is basically just any educational or any kind of, counseling or mental health related activity can count toward those hours. then finally, at long last, you can apply to be a fully licensed counselor in the state of Missouri. And so you wait for your paperwork to come back, and what a glorious day when you finally get that license, that you're fully licensed. So in practice, there's not much difference really between being a provisionally licensed provider and a fully licensed provider, but it's just another one of those hoops that you kind of have to go through. You can do pretty much all the same things. You just have to have somebody else sign off on your notes and your treatment plans and stuff like that.
So tell us about sort of, and I know counseling is a very like HIPAA confidentiality sort of thing, but you worked with college students then for a few years after that. Like, what are some of the things that you saw, generally speaking, in that population?
Well, and you worked with college students post COVID, kind of probably at the peak of the need for counseling for college students, right? Like, I mean, coming out of one of the most unprecedented things that had happened, and they were just starting out, their high school ended weird or their college started weird. So, kind of
Mhm.
a unique time to start, too, and probably, gave you even more stuff to learn from, I would guess. So,
Yeah, I feel like I was so thankful that I had a good team around me at Northwest and that I had good supervision during that time. And I had also had a good experience in my internship. I worked mostly with children and adolescents during that time. So I did feel like as much as I could be, I was prepared to get started. But who would have thought that my counseling that I was going to provide would be exclusively telehealth for the first like year and a half that I was doing it because and hardly anybody had been offering telehealth services at all for mental health prior to that. And then to just totally be thrown in the middle of that, where yes, I have a good team around me at the university, but we're sitting in our offices like right across the hall from each other. And we're not able to actually go out in the hallway and talk. Like you're instructed to just like walk in and then shut your door and then just do Zoom sessions. And like even our team meetings are over Zoom, even though we're like 10 feet away from each other. It's just a very bizarre time. And I'm not sure that this is true for every provider. In fact, I'm sure that it's not. Everybody's different stylistically. But for me, very little of what my sessions look like is the stuff that you see in movies or on TV, where I think most of what I've seen is like people just laying on a couch, like talking about why the color yellow makes them sad or whatever, and just kind of talking or just like having somebody to talk to, I guess. And I won't say that that's never the case, but after like we've had two or three or four sessions, like, all right, like let's do something here. Like let's set some goals and figure out how we can, improve your wellness overall. But at that time, there was a lot of that. Like there was a lot of students that started at Northwest. They were freshmen at the time, and they were just, I mean, poor students. I mean, they were so isolated. And I felt like one of the greatest things about being at Northwest as a student myself, it was like you almost had to try to not get involved with something or like find your people, so to speak. It was second nature. It was hard to avoid, I suppose. But for those students, they were so disconnected because campus organizations just weren't happening. They really weren't able to meet people. They were living in the dorms, but they didn't know their next door neighbors, because they were instructed to just keep their mask on and move forward. And again, one of those things, not really anybody's fault. It just was a difficult part of that time. And so then when some of the restrictions started to relax a little bit and life started to kind of get back to more like air quotes normal, then there was almost like a second wave of like big spikes in anxiety that were happening at the time because people were trying to figure out how to re-engage with what was going on. And it was like they were making up for lost time. I remember one of the first football games that I went to after some of the restrictions had relaxed. It was the season opener for Northwest, and it was like nobody knew how to be in a crowd. Like it was one of the quietest Bearcat football games I've ever been to in my life. It was so strange to like be there because normally like season opener, like it's a ruckus environment there. People are crazy. And yeah, it was just like crickets, and the students were just like not making any noise. And I was like, this is weird. This is weird right now. And so we definitely saw some of those things on the mental health side, and just a lot. I mean, a lot of stuff. There was definitely a big need to provide that support at the time. So it was good that we were there, I think, to be able to do that as best we could.
Yeah, I remember leading up to COVID, like there was a lot of talk around campus that like the requests from students for counseling and for the need for interventions had been kind of chugging upward before that anyway. And then when that
Yeah.
happened, it just kind of exploded. So I feel like the generation, the group of students that were in around COVID were already kind of self-advocating that they needed things, and then COVID happened and they really needed things. So yeah, people still don't know how to act in public, even 5 years out of COVID.
Well,
So
I don't know that they ever really did before
that's
that,
true.
but it
Yeah.
definitely got even weirder.
Yeah, we regressed a little, I
Like
think. So
yeah, yes, yeah.
So tell us then that transition from, you're working here for a few years, you get fully licensed, right, while you're at Northwest. What kind of precipitated this transition or this feeling that you wanted to work for yourself? Or, honestly, you're not working for yourself, right? You're serving your community, to be honest.
Yeah, trying to, hopefully. I love my time at Northwest. I tell people all the time when I left, it was an extremely difficult decision because it's not like how it normally is when people leave jobs where it's like, forget all you people, I'm out of here. Like that was not the situation, not even remotely. Like I loved working there. Like if I would have worked my entire career there, I would have been, I think, perfectly happy. Really what it was I just while I do think that I was having an impact there at the university, I couldn't ignore the fact that my roots are Northwest Missouri, and I mean, honestly, I've been very blessed to have kind of a sense of purpose. I think that I was supposed to do something to serve the community, like the Northwest Missouri community at large, since I was about 14 years old. And I mean, I say that I also flirted with like doing other things career related as I went, but it just, those doors always kind of closed, and I was just kind of came back to this. And so I had a incident where I was actually asked to come and speak at Nottoway Holt, a local school, pretty small school, roughly equivalent to the same size school that I grew up in Mound City. And there was part of what I was talking about there and presenting to the group was we were covering the topic of anxiety. And there was a student who was triggered by some of the things that I was saying. So, leave it to the counselor who wants to help people to show up and then, make everybody feel worse. But I was actually able to pull the student aside, and we talked like in the school counselor's office. She wanted to like talk it through with me and everything, and I was able to help her like get regulated and hopefully go have a day. And there was a lot that was going on in her personal life that factored into what happened, and it was pretty understandable, why she felt the way that she did. And I asked her, I was like, do you have any resources? Like, is there anything that you can do? And she's like, no. And, my heart just kind of broke whenever that happened, because I was like, so, I mean, from my perspective, like where I sit, I felt pretty helpless because I wanted to help, and there's nothing that I can do for this student. It's like I don't remember how old she was, but in high school at the time. So I have to hope that in 5 years or something, she enrolls at Northwest, and like then maybe like I can help her at that point. But a lot of life can happen in 5 years, and that's just early intervention is always better. And so there was lots of other things that precipitated, the move. Uh, but that was one of the big things that really perked my ears up of like, I'm never going to be able to have the kind of impact on the community at large if I'm just at the wellness center for the rest of my career. And so it was really difficult because, like I said, I absolutely loved working there, loved the people. But yeah, that was pretty big. And then, kind of on the heels of that, just a couple months later, because I had that in the back of my mind, but I thought that would be something I would do when I'm I don't know, old. I don't know what old means, but just like old. Like people don't start businesses, not like this. They don't start like whole mental health practices whenever they're 28 years old. Like that's absurd, right? Especially in a profession that values age and experience and wisdom, and rightfully so. So I don't know. I guess I just felt disqualified or like an imposter or something, if I'm being honest. But around that same time, I'm friends with the principal at Northeast Nottoway, which is another small school in the area. Her name is Heidi Beatty. And Heidi had gotten a hold of me because she said that their school was receiving a mental health grant, essentially. And she asked me if I would be able to like fulfill the grant because what they were wanting was for a provider to come to school at least like one day a week and like work with kids directly. Well, I was still full time at the university, and so I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I remember going home and telling my wife, "Hey, like you remember Heidi? Like she reached out to me, like this is going on." I was like, and I'll try to help her find somebody, maybe knowing there's not really that many people who could do it, but I'll try to help, just because I want to be helpful. And she asked if I wanted to do it. And I said, well, unless they only need me for like one day a week and they're, going to pay me like $20,000 or something crazy like that, there's no way that I could do it. And let me just tell you, God has kind of a funny sense of humor sometimes because I called her the next day and she was like, "Hey, Hayston, so just so you know, what we're kind of looking for is for a provider to come to school for one day a week. And the grant is for $25,000 that will be paid like completely to the provider." And as soon as she said that, my jaw like hung open and my mind started racing because I realized this is it. Like, this is the bridge, basically, because I have three children and we pretty much live off of just my income. And so I was like, well, even if it's just 1 year, or even if it only lasts for 1 year, that will give me enough like stable income to be able to have something coming in and also be able to not start with $0 as I start my clinical practice. And so anyway, my next door neighbor there at the wellness center is my business partner, Courtney Koch. And she and I had kind of talked about, hey, pie in the sky. Maybe at some point, we go into business together. Because let me tell you, it's kind of ironic that I'm being interviewed by career services right now because I am not a business mind. Like, don't ask me to do accounting. Don't ask me to look at spreadsheets. I don't know the first, like, I'm horrible with Excel. Like, just all of the stuff that you would think, like, a business owner should be good at. Like, I'm not your guy for that. It makes my eyes glaze over so fast. But Courtney she actually has her MBA that she got through Northwest, in addition to her counseling program as well. And so anyway, I went to her and I was like, you know how we'd always talked about this? I think it's happening, and it's happening like right now. And anyway, she had some stuff going on in her personal life with her family, and it all kind of lined up the way that it was supposed to be. So that first year, which was 2 years ago, we wound up being able to fulfill that same grant for three different schools. And then this past year, the grant money's like kind of changed and it's not the same. It's a little bit less and different, but some of the schools were able to pay at least a little bit out of their own pocket. But this past year, we were able to be and serve 7 schools in the area, and we're hoping to be able to expand and grow into at least a few more schools for this next year. So it's been pretty cool to see all that happening.
Well, like you said, Northwest Missouri is such a care desert for mental health services. If you look, they have those maps you can look up online where you can see like healthcare provider deserts and mental health. And there's a dearth of providers in Northwest Missouri. And, telehealth helps, but it's not the same for everybody. So, the fact that you're out there helping just even the high school students or the school students, like I'm sure that's having a huge impact on the region because when you go from 0 to 2, that's 200% better than it was before. So yeah, that's fantastic.
Yep, and we've been able to add another provisionally licensed provider to our practice starting this last year, and then we've got a master's level clinical intern as well, and some administrative help. That's been a godsend. So Yeah, so our practice has grown, steadily here over the last couple years, and that's been pretty exciting because, like I said, I don't feel like I did anything super strategic business wise to be able to like cause that. So yeah, I just feel like God's kind of taken care of us. It's been cool. So, and the community's been really supportive. That's been so helpful. I mean, Northwest Missouri, the university, just even other mental health providers. It's interesting because in this line of work, and like you said, Travis, being in a resource desert, truthfully, it's not competition. It's really not competition like between providers because there's just so much need that it's like, how can we help meet the need? And so everybody kind of plays well together for the most part as far as working together just to try to get people the help and the care that they need. So that's been great. I feel like we've been really well supported and received by the community.
So we do a lot of adjacent counseling here, right? It's very
Yes.
stressful looking for a job, and I'm often talking students and alums, down off the anxiety post myself.
We make sure Hannah does all those.
I am the counselor. I'm the non-licensed counselor in this office. What are some insights in terms of best practices for feeling stress around career-oriented things or job-related things? Maybe just from a just plain mental health perspective, like how can you take care of yourself while you're looking for a job or while you're a student graduating from college and trying to navigate all of these life transitions?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I do have a lot of thoughts about that because I do a lot of career counseling as far as that goes. Not to the same, it's not the same. It's not the same lane as what you guys are doing. But it can cause anxiety when you're just kind of hurry up and waiting on things that are out of your control that move really slow. So, generally speaking, something that's been helpful, at least for myself personally in the past, is asking two questions of anxiety. Question number one, do I have control over this? And question number two, if yes to number one, do I have control over it right now? And oftentimes, you do have some control over your job status, like how if you filled out the application, for example, like you do have control over that. But when you're waiting to hear back on if you're going to get an interview or not, no, you don't have any control over that. So when it's yes to question one and no to question two, I find it pretty helpful to circle a worry about it date on the calendar of a time where you project it will actually be appropriate to worry about it. I always heard going through school and everything, like, don't avoid your feelings, don't ever avoid anything. And that doesn't really apply to anxiety that you have for situations that you have no control over. So feel free to distract yourself or return your attention and focus to something you actually do have control over right now, as opposed to when are they going to email me back. So that's just general counsel. That's been helpful to me. I've literally had to get out my planner and circle a day to worry about different things before. I also think if you're somebody who's younger who's listening to this, if you're a high school student or somebody who's maybe like a freshman or sophomore in college and you're still not exactly sure what you want to do, I have noticed, let's just call it a well-meaning generational gap between especially like grandparents and current students, sometimes parents and students. And I get it. Usually grandparents and parents just want to make sure that their grandkids and their kids are going to be okay and that they've thought about their future and they're not just kind of winging it. But the question, what are you going to do after high school, after college, or whatever? That's like an impossible question to answer. And I think that it also sort of reduces your meaning and purpose in life to just your work. And I think work is obviously super important. Your career is very important as an aspect of life, and it does provide meaning and purpose. But honestly, you're a loser if your career is the only thing that you have going for you. Like, that's pretty lame. So to say, oh, well, what are you going to do? You can't answer that. Now, in sort of the older generation's defense, I think it really did kind of used to work like that from just a career landscape. I mean, it really was like you got your education you were going to get, and then you did go to work for the company, the factory, you farmed, you taught, like you did whatever for most of your career and you kind of stayed in your same lane and did the same thing. Maybe you were promoted within the organization, or maybe you left working here, but and pretty much went to do the same thing over here. I think that's way more the exception rather than the norm now. Just because you want to do something right now doesn't mean that you have to be tied to that for the rest of your life. In fact, I would encourage people to not view it that way. So when you're going through your education and when you're considering like your first work experiences, I think it's just generally good counsel to do something that's broad, that's going to enable you to open more doors in the future. And education is a good key to be able to unlock those doors as well as experience. I know for myself, I did a heck of a lot of career inventories growing up, and those are challenging because if you're a pretty introspective person and you know yourself pretty well, I'm not going to say that there was no point to them, because there was, but they kind of, when the algorithms from those assessments were completed, usually they were telling me the same kind of things and I already knew that. Like they were saying like, well, Hayston, you would be a good doctor, counselor, pastor, teacher, coach. And I'm like, I know those are the things that I'm like considering doing pretty much. And then I'd take another one and it would, whatever, it'd switch the order up, but it'd be kind of the same thing, or it'd throw like law enforcement in there or something. But like it was always like human services related things, which is what I already kind of knew about myself. So in grad school, we had to take a career development and counseling class, and I found that to be pretty helpful. This is pretty silly. I'll try to hold it up to the screen, but I did this little flower petal exercise. It's out of the book, What Color is Your Parachute? And I found that to be really helpful. I know it's like silly, and I also hope, because I'm not really good with graphic design, I hope that you all appreciated how perfect those circles were. If you're just listening on the podcast, you can't see it, but trust me, the circles on my flower petal exercise, I did clip art and I drug those circles, and it took me a long time in Microsoft Word. But anyway, it was helpful to me because it asked different things like, okay, so you know what career you want to do, but that doesn't tell you much. Like, where are your preferred places to live? What's your preferred salary range or level of responsibility? What kind of working conditions do you like? You know, what can you do? What do you love to do? And then I think there's flower petal number 7, which is my goal or purpose or mission in life is whatever. And we had to spend a lot of time starting there and really defining in one sentence, which is tough, what our goal, purpose, or mission in life is. And then from there, you sort of work down into, okay, so how does a career fit into that for yourself? So this took me a long time. And I wrote this, oh gosh, it was probably 2018 when I made this, but I wouldn't really disagree with this even now. I would maybe expand it a little bit now, like being married and having kids. But from a work standpoint, I think that this is true at least. So I wrote, to facilitate healing of others by providing mental and spiritual care that is rooted in the good news about Jesus Christ. And as far as winnowing down the specifics of where that was gonna, how this was gonna work out, my preferred places to live. This was one of the things, as odd as it may sound, that kept me on track and got me to here where Hallelujah Counseling is now. Because how insane do you have to be to have this list? Okay, I'm going to read my list of my preferred places to live. Like, I feel like this is probably basically me and only me on earth that has the list I'm about to read to you. My preferred places to live. Rural Northwest Missouri, number 1. Who has that as number 1 on their list? Like, I could have put Hawaii or like Japan, somewhere awesome. I mean, not that it's not awesome around here, but you know what I mean. And then I had Des Moines, Iowa, Colorado near Denver, Central or Southern Missouri, and then Juneau, Alaska, just because I have a buddy that lives up there and he sends me Snapchats of catching trout out of mountain streams with grizzly bears in the back. And I think that that's awesome. But when I had that list and I realized Northwest Missouri, like it's home to me, that's where I feel like I'm supposed to be. That really helped me because I realized a lot about the direction that my career was probably going to head when that was the case. And part of this prompted me to call Kristen at the Wellness Center and that part of that was what prompted me to want to start our practice that could actually serve this Northwest Missouri area and the community at large. Because the direction of our business, I've never felt like we're supposed to be a huge national brand or a gigantic counseling practice. I really just don't think that that's what we're supposed to do. I think that our focus is just trying as best we can to meet the need right here. Maybe a little bit the surrounding area, but I'd be surprised if we ever branched out and had 20 different office locations. I don't think that's what we're supposed to do. So I think it's helped me really clarify like what lane I'm supposed to stay in, and that really helps a lot with the direction that we're supposed to go. So the career inventories have been helpful, but once you kind of know the career that you're supposed to do, then talking the specifics of like what that looks like and how that fits into your larger mission and purpose in life, I think is really, really important to define that.
Thank you for sharing that because I often talk to especially students about that, like narrowing things down geographically. It seems almost too simple to them sometimes, right? Like, oh, I'm supposed to be thinking big about my future, or I'm supposed to know, like you said, I'm supposed to know what's in store for me when none of us do. Let's be clear, Travis and I did not set out to be working in the career services office when we were young pups. I can guarantee you that. But that geographic, I mean, we're here because we also chose rural Missouri as our number one geographic area. And so, we have different work, but we're all in the same place and also serving the same community because we chose geographically to be here. So that's not anything that you should, thumb your nose up at by any means.
No, I have to remind students all the time that it's real hard to look for any job anywhere. When you ask them, what do you want to do? I'll do anything anywhere. It's like, cool. What do you want to do? Pick something. Pick three
Right.
places, pick three job titles. Let's search for those and see what we got. Because anytime, anywhere, it's great to be open, but that's too open. Like you got to narrow things down a little bit. And I think, the what color is your parachute? Like I have two copies of that book behind me. That's funny. But it is important, like the 7 petals, like some people have that drive. Like you knew what you wanted to do. You knew kind of your mission and purpose. Students struggle with that. It's like, we tell them find your passion. And sometimes they're like, well, I'm not passionate about anything. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Where do you want to live? And then we'll build around that. So it's like, you just need one of the 7 to start. You don't have to have all 7 figured out. And I think that's
Right.
a lot of times people lose the forest for the trees because they're like, I don't have my life figured out. And it's like, well, neither do I. I'm 45 years old and my life isn't even close to figured out. So that's just how it works. You do what you control, what you can control. Like you said, you put off the anxiety. Like those decisions don't have to be made today. You just have to make a decision today and then we'll move the next one down. So I think that's really good advice, not just for anxiety, but for everything is like control what you can control and then manage what you can manage. So
That's all you can do.
we always like to ask, and I think as a counselor, you're in prime position to give us a great answer for this. We always ask for advice for students, maybe something you wish you would have known when you were a college student or someone who worked with college students and still works with young people. Like, what advice do you have maybe for people who are, they want to be in a helping profession in the human services area and they don't know where to start? Like, any advice that you can share from someone who's been there and made a success of it?
I think that managing your own wellness is so, so important. I cannot overstate the emphasis that I would place on that. Even when you're not tired and when you're not feeling burnout, you have to build a discipline of being proactive in your care because you never want to lose your empathy and you want to be able to always feel with people whenever they're going through things because that just helps you connect. And I don't care what theoretical orientation you follow, it's not going to be effective. Even if it's logically correct, if you can't build rapport and meet people where they're at emotionally, it's just not going to be effective. And so I think for me, I've been able to develop a protocol for myself that has allowed me, I mean, I won't lie to you, I'm not perfect. There are some days that I'm like, oof, I'm tired today. Like my coffee consumption is probably not at a healthy level all the time because of my having 3 children and being up sometimes not getting adequate sleep. But I've found that if I do, it doesn't have to be crazy, but if I do, 15 or 20 minutes of things every day to take care of myself that improve my mood, lower my stress, and I'm consistent with those things, that allows me to sort of run the marathon of caring. Because I learned pretty quickly that I have a big emotional capacity. I can take on a lot, but an emotional capacity nonetheless. And it's eventually gonna be tapped out. So I learned I can do this pretty well for about 3 years if I don't manage my wellness, and then start to peter out and probably have to make a career change. But that wasn't what I felt like I was supposed to do. So I was like, I have to be better at taking time off, and I have to be better about being proactive with caring well for myself. And that needs to be an emphasis for me. And I think that that's true for all of us, regardless of what career we're in. Just different careers tax you at an emotional level to a different degree. So that's been what's allowed me to continue, I think.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice. Yeah, you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of everyone else. It's the plane thing, right? The drop the oxygen mask, you put yours on first before you help somebody else, because otherwise you run out of air. That's just how it works. So,
All right. Well, thank you. It's been great having you as a guest on today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you guys. I appreciate the opportunity, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
all right, sounds good. Well, that will do it for another episode of Behind the Bearcat, and we'll talk to you next time.